So in the previous tutorial videos, we learned about quite many basics about declaring array, initializing the array using different approaches, and also how to use loops to iterate through the array, and also how to patternize the initialization for the array. We learned many basics already. So now, I would like to do one more thing to complete the picture for this week. I would like to just show you how you can use user input and output and do some simple application for the array. And I also want to show you a different type of the array. So far we're only dealing with array of integers. You can also do an array of strings, for example. Okay, I'll use a very simple application to show you. And you can be very creative about mixing them in a way that will satisfy the completion of your lab assignments. Okay, so now let's do a new class. This will be very brief. Okay, so now let's right click on the before package and say new class over here. So I would say string array app. Okay, whenever I say app, that means I want to do some input and output from the user, especially keyboard input from the user. Okay, main method generation over here. Okay, so now basically the application is simply let me write down what the application is supposed to do, and then we'll do it. Okay, so now simply ask the user how many names of how many names of the people you want to greet. Okay, and then prompt the user for however many times they specify. For example, if the user simply say, I want to enter 5 names, then you'll prompt it for 5 times. If they say they want to enter 10 names, you want to prompt it for 10 times. Okay, and then greet all the user entered names. Okay, basically that's what we want to do. Okay, so now we're gonna have kind of interesting application. Okay, so now let's try that, and then we'll trace the code. But now the way I trace the code, let's use debugger. Okay, so now I can simply say now, we simply say first of all scanner. Okay, control space. So now it's imported. Input is new scanner system.int, and then don't forget to close it. Okay, and then first of all ask the user how many names you want to greet. System.out.println how many people do you want to greet? Okay, and then we're gonna prompt the user for some integer. Okay, we can say integer how many is input dot next int. And don't forget, if you want to mix next int and next line, you want to have next line for every next int, right? That's kind of trick we want to really make sure we do. Otherwise, your program might have weird behavior. So after this, I gotta say input dot next line, just a workaround for the issue for the scanner. Okay. So now we're gonna say how many. So now here's the thing. So now if the user says however many they said, it can be 5, it can be 10, it can be 11, it can be 100, it can be 1 million. Okay, so that means however many they have, we have to create an array accordingly with the corresponding size. How do we do that? Now you can say that. So let's say we want to store names. So now every element in this array is going to be of type string, and then we put the array notation here, right? Just like how we declare an array of integers. So now the element type is string rather than int. Okay, and now we can say names over here is assigned to new string array over here. But now what should we put inside over here, right? In the previous example, we simply put 5, or we put 10, or we put 9, concrete number. But now this really depends on what the user enter. If the user enter 5, this should be 5. If the user enter 10, this should be 10. Well, since it's really already stored in this particular variable, why don't we simply just put how many? Okay, this is the most important thing for this particular app that I want to show you. Okay, so this is what I meant by creative, right? Whenever you want to use develop your app, you want to be creative about using the syntax you were taught. And the best way to learn it is by seeing examples. So now over here, so now once we get the names, So now we want to really run a loop to say how many for that many times you want to prompt the user. Okay, so now I can say for integer I is assigned initialized to be 0, because I want to use I for two purposes. I want to use the I for the index into the array to reassign individual elements into the name, and also I want to use I to actually I also want to use the I to tell me which you'll see actually. Okay, it's hard to explain for now, but let's see exactly how I'm going to use it. And then I strictly less than how many. For example, if how many happens to be 5, for example, right? So I will simply be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 5 numbers. Okay, so that will work. I plus plus. Okay, and then for each one of them, we're going to say system.out.println. Okay, and then enter name number 1. Okay, so now I'm going to say name I plus 1. There's a reason I say I plus 1 over here, but we'll see. Okay, then we don't want to say name 0, name 1, name 2. Well, we're going to start with 1. Name 1, name 2, name 3, name 4, name 5, etc. Enter the name, and then we say over here. Okay, so now string name is simply assigned to, I can say input dot next line over here. Okay, and then we're going to store the name into the names array. So names array at position I. Okay, I can use I directly for the purpose of the indexing, and then I can say it's assigned to whatever name I just read. Okay, so now once I'm done, what I will do is after this, so now when you exit from this particular for loop, that means now the names array have been reassigned such that each element in the array now has a name over there, right? So now, and then I can say over here, let's say I want to greet everybody in the names array. I can say for integer, I can use I again, because again this I over here is only within this particular scope for the for loop, so I can reuse the name. I is assigned to 0, I less than, well, we know pretty well from the previous tutorial video, that's how you iterate through an array. So I can say over here names dot length I plus plus. Okay, and then I can say system.out.println. Okay, I can say hello, and then I can say let's say I simply want to greet the person. Hello, names and position I. Okay, and then I put an exclamation mark at the end. Okay, that's what I will do. Okay, let's see how the app will work like, and then we'll trace it together. Okay, okay, let's try to execute the code over here. Right click on string array app and say run as Java application. Okay, how many people do you want to greet? Let's say 5 people. Enter name 1. Okay, so now what about Jihei? And then Sunhei. Okay, name 2. And also what about Hyun? Okay, what about Suyan? And then what about Yuna? Okay, you can see so far we're able to enter 5 names. As soon as we are done with the name number 5, because you can see apparently internally the program, after I say 5 over here, is going to say how many is simply just equal to 5, right? It's going to initialize an array of size 5. And then after I enter 5 names and say enter, it's going to run a loop and then say hello Jihei, hello Sunhei, hello Hyun, hello Suyan, and hello Yuna, right? So that's exactly what the program is supposed to do. Okay, so now the program works. Okay, so there are many interesting details you can simply learn from. Okay, I will leave that to you. However, I would like to trace the code together with you using the debugger very quickly. And then for now, I'll simply just use maybe 3 names. Okay, so now you can see exactly how large the array will be created at this line here depends on the user. If the user simply enter a small number, they can enter 1. They can enter 0, right? Let's not worry about a special case 0 just yet, okay? If they simply enter 1, that means only 1 name. If they enter 2, that means 2 names. If they enter a million, it's going to be a million names, okay? We're going to see that. So now what I would like to do, I would like to put a breakpoint at line number 14 right before we prompt the user for we prompt the user for some for how many people they want to greet. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to run the debugger. So now I simply right-click, double-click, right-click on the string array app, and then I would say debug as Java application. Okay, so now you can see now. Okay, hopefully you're comfortable with the debugger. It's really important. Okay, so now so now we haven't printed out that line yet in the console. Nothing yet. Okay, again, don't worry about this particular red line. Okay, don't worry about it. It's not relevant. If I say step over, you can see how many people do you want to greet. Okay, if I say go to the next one, okay, so it's not expecting me to type something. Let's say 3 over here. As soon as I say enter over here, you can see over here how many is now storing 3, right? You can also see from the variables how many is now 3 because I entered 3. So now that's interesting to go step over again. So now it's right before we try to execute line number 18. Let's predict what's going to happen. At the moment, you can see how many is simply 3. We don't have the names array just yet because we haven't executed line number 18. We are pausing at the beginning of that. So now after line number 18, what we expect to see is we're going to create an array of strings with 3 slots basically because of size 3. Okay, let's try that. But you might be having one question. In the case of the integer array, the default value for each element is simply 0. What about the default value for string? Okay, that's something I want to show you, but you don't have to worry too much about it. Okay, let's see. If I say step over here, you can see we do have a names array. If you click on that, you simply say null, null, and null. For now, we're going to talk about the meaning for null after the reading week when we talk about objects, right? But for now, you can think about null simply means it does not store anything meaningful. It's basically useless value at the moment. Okay, that's how you can think of null. Null has a special meaning in Java, which I'll talk about after the reading week. Okay, but now you can see that we have the names array. You got index 0, index 1, and index 2. Every one of them stores simply just null. You can go to the expressions over here. Again, if you don't see the expressions, you can go to Window and Show View, and then you can go to expressions over here, right? So now, let me just get rid of the previous one. Okay, I can right-click and say Remove All. Okay, and now I can simply say what's, for example, what's how many? How many is simply 3. What about names.length is simply 3, right? That because we simply created the size of the names accordingly. Okay, so now we're gonna execute a for loop header for the first time. Let's anticipate what's going to happen. Since we have done so many tracing using debugger and also tables, hopefully you can predict what's going to happen. Okay, if you're not so confident yet, please review the previous videos. It's really important for you to pick up the skills. So now, for here, I is going to be initialized to be 0, and 0 less than how many, which is 3. So what I can do is I can simply go to the expressions over here. I can say I less than how many. At the moment, it's going to be error because we haven't executed line number 20 yet for the first time. So I is not just being declared yet. That's okay. So now, I initial value for I would just be 0. 0 less than 3 would just be true. Okay. So now if I say step over, so now you can see I less than how many would just be true. That means we go inside the loop over here for the very first time. And then if you say step over, but now notice one thing, we got I plus 1. This is some kind of the trick we did in the previous video. So now if I put I plus 1, I plus 1 will just be 1. So this is why when we print out, we'll say enter name I plus 1, which is 1. If I say step over, you can see now enter name 1. Exactly, right? You can see this is 1, which is I plus 1. Okay. And then it's now expecting us to enter a name. So now we got 3 names. Let's say Hyang. How about that? Okay, and then we can enter and then we say step over. So now what's gonna happen over here is you can see what we're gonna do is if you go to the variables over here, you can see for the name, let's see what's gonna happen. Expand the names array over here. At the moment it's simply especially pay attention to index 0. At the moment, it's simply storing storing null, nothing meaningful. But the name at the moment has been assigned to Hyang. You can see, right? The name is now Hyang. Now, as soon as I execute line number 23, what's going to happen? That means Hyang is going to be stored into index 0 of the names array. So now let's watch what's going to happen. We can expect this particular line to be highlighted in yellow. Okay, let's see. If I say step over, you can see that's exactly the line that's being highlighted in yellow. So now at index 0 is now storing Hyang, and now we are at the end of the first iteration. So now what do we expect to see? So now right before we try to end the first iteration, I will be incremented by 1, which means it will go. The current value for I is simply just 0, right? That's for the first iteration. I will be incremented from 0 to 1, and 1 less than how many, which is 3, will still be true, right? So now if I say step over again, you can see the value for I is now 1. And 1 less than 3, how many, is simply true. So that means we're going to execute the body of the loop for the second time. So now what's going to be the outcome for this line, 21? I plus 1 over here, as we know, is simply going to be 1 plus 1, which is 2. That means enter name 2, the second name, right? So now if I say step over, you will see in the console over here, enter name 2. You can see we don't want to say enter name 0, enter name 1. It appears weird to the user. The user will count naturally from 1, not 0. So that's why I'll do a little bit trick over here. Okay, hopefully you can pick out the skill. So now what we can do is we're going to enter the name. Let's say Suyang. Okay, and then I can say step over. So now you can see that in the variables, name is now being changed to Suyang. Used to be Hyang, but it's now Suyang. So now what do we expect to see from line number 23 when we step over? Again, you can see that at the moment, index 0 has been assigned to Hyang in the previous iteration. At the current iteration, we're going to expect to see an index 1, which is the current value for I, is going to be assigned to the name of Suyang. Okay, so now if I say step over, you can see that exactly that line highlighted in yellow. So that means at index 1 is now being assigned to Suyang. Okay, so now we're now reaching the end of the second iteration. So now what do we expect to see? The current value for I is simply just 1. It will be incremented from 1 to 2. And now let's predict. 2 less than how many, which is 3, 2 less than 3 will be still true. That means we got one more chance maybe to actually enter another name. So now if I say step over, okay, now you can see I has been incremented from 1 to 2, and now you can see I plus 1 will just be 3. So that means we're going to say enter name 3, the third name we can actually prompt the user to enter. Okay, so now if I say step over here, enter name 3. Let's say Yuna over here. Okay, and then I can simply say step over. So now, third time we're trying to execute this line. If I look at the variables over here, at the moment I is simply equal to 2. That means we want to modify index 2. If I expand the names array over here, you can see index 2 for names array is still storing null, as index 0, index 1 have been reassigned in the previous 2 iterations already. So now it seems like we got one last iteration to do. Okay, so now names at position 2 should be assigned to, let me say that if you move your mouse over, names at position 2 should be assigned to Yuna. Okay, so now let's step over. That's exactly what happened, right? You can see again, this is the line that's being highlighted yellow, is the one that's just changed. So now you can see index 2 is now Yuna, that's stored in that array. Okay, index 2. So now what's going to happen is we're going to execute this particular I++ at the end of the third iteration. So that means I will be incremented from 2 to 3. And now 3 less than how many, which is 3. 3 less than 3 will give you false. That means we're going to exit from the loop. Now if you say step over, okay, we simply go exit the loop. So now because the I was only within the scope of this particular loop. So I does not exist at this point anymore until we initialize another I for this loop. Okay, so that's why you simply see errors over here, but we pretty much know what's going to happen. If you want to double check your understanding, feel free to actually use a table to trace it. I will leave that to you. Okay, so now we're gonna also greet the people over here, and we just run the loop as we did in the previous tutorial video. We just run the loop from index 0 until the length of the array -1, because it's strictly less than. Okay, we also talked about this many times already. Okay, that's exactly what you will see. You can see from the very first iteration, we're gonna say hello Hyang, okay, the very first name, and then for the second iteration, we're gonna say hello Suyang, the second name. And also for the third iteration, we're going to say hello Yuna. That's for the third iteration. And after that, we're going to exit from the loop. Okay, and then we're going to terminate the program. Okay, hopefully you can see this simple application here, but it shows also some new details that you haven't learned from the previous tutorial video. Especially we got the interleaving between user input and also some array creation. That's very valuable for you to learn. Let me recap very quickly, and then we are done. So basically, we are trying to say the way we create the array over here is pretty much similar to approach 2 from the previous tutorial video. The only difference is now the expression, the integer we put over here for the size is not a concrete value anymore. It's simply a value that depends on what the user actually enter. Okay, so that's the interesting bit. Okay, and then we simply say how many times we're going to prompt the user, which is specified as part of the state condition. Depends on the value that the user enter. If the user say, I want to enter 10 names, they're going to enter, you're going to run the for loop for 10 times. If they say they want to enter 1,000,000 names, in which case you're going to run the loop for 1,000,000 times. Okay, so you can see the value, really the powerfulness, the power for the for loop. Okay, so notice that this is also less than how many. So how many really depends on what the user enter over here. So everything will just work accordingly. And then we also have this notation over here to say every iteration we're simply going to reassign the array a particular index over here, which is a loop counter value. And we also did this previously. And then to some particular value that's again read in from the user. Okay, you can see that's very interesting to see how we apply the previous techniques for the array basics to this user input application. Okay, try to review this example carefully, and now you should be ready to do this week's lab assignments.